The internet as we know it may disappear. And no, sadly this is not a clickbait.
Around the world, the internet is becoming increasingly restricted through new laws. And this isn't a story about North Korea, China, or Iran. In Europe, laws are already being actively discussed and in some cases partially introduced, where accessing certain types of content or services requires age verification through IDs. In other words, the internet is gradually ceasing to be just an open space and is becoming a place where you have to prove who you are just to enter a website.
Добро пожаловать в Арстоцку.
The situation in the United States is also moving in the same direction.
Hi, I'm Sheree DeVille. As you may know, your elected officials have required us to verify your age before granting you access to our website.
Different states are introducing different rules for access to content and platforms, making the internet start to look like a map with zones of restriction. The internet is becoming less of a unified space and more of a collection of separate systems, each with its own rules. And the question is no longer whether the internet will change, but how much it will change before we stop recognizing it as what it used to be. For example, here's the path of internet restrictions in Russia, where the free internet used to be as normal as water or electricity, but slowly began turning into a controlled system. At first, certain websites were blocked at the request of government authorities. Then entire services started being restricted. After that came bans on social networks like Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. In some regions, mobile internet began getting shut down. YouTube started working inconsistently. Officially, this was explained as technical issue and infrastructure problems. But at the same time, authorities started issuing fines for advertising there because it supposedly violates the law.
Which law exactly? No one knows. They just say it violates the law, and that's pretty much it.
Today, without a VPN, millions of people cannot access parts of the internet. And most importantly, this didn't happen overnight. The internet wasn't turned off with a single switch. It was changed gradually. One law, one restriction, one blocked service after another. In a country where you could pay with Apple Pay, even in the most remote rural areas, they are now recommending switching back to paper maps.
And if you think, well, that's Russia, of course government there, restrict the internet, you would be mistaken. This is no longer just about authoritarian countries. Similar laws and restrictions are appearing around the world. There's one interesting example that often comes up when people talk about the internet and control over it. And the name of this example is Pavel Durov.
I witnessed firsthand which methods governments use to suppress our freedoms and to take away our basic rights. I've seen all the tricks, the PR tricks, the legal tricks, the political tricks, the manipulations, the official excuses. I've become an expert at this.
A man who built his career on creating massively popular social networks. First came VK, a Russian equivalent of Facebook. It was essentially part of everyday life. Music, communication, news, communities, everything in one place. But during political protests in Ukraine, where VK was widely used, Durov was asked to provide data on administrators and organizers of protest groups, and according to his statements, he refused. After that, he was forced to leave Russia, and control over VK eventually shifted to entities linked to the state. And the platform that was once seen as relatively free gradually changed. Today, VK is a much more controlled environment, where a significant portion of content comes from official sources, state media, and promoted narratives, including materials connected to government structures and the military. You can still post there, but your content is now under close scrutiny, and likes, comments, or even private messages can potentially lead to consequences. It no longer resembles the open social network it once was in its early days. Later, while based in Dubai, Durov created Telegram.
So Russia banned Telegram for all of its citizens because we refused to comply with their demands for mass surveillance and censorship. However, 95% 5% of Russian teenagers still use Telegram every month.
On one hand, it is a messaging app that for many has become a symbol of privacy, encrypted calls, large news channels, and fast information exchange. And also you can keep files there for free. That's what I do. On the other hand, it is often criticized for weak moderation and for hosting both legal and potentially harmful or illegal content. Because of this, Telegram is seen simultaneously as a tool for freedom and as a shady platform, depending on how and by whom it is used. At the same time, different countries periodically try to restrict Telegram or increase control over it, usually under the pretext of fighting terrorism, extremism, and illegal activity.
And the thing that bothers me most today is that some of the same tricks that have been employed by authoritarian regimes, places like Russia or China and Iran, are now being also used in some Western countries.
Okay, governments put pressure on platforms, but how they actually put in pressure on us? When I was in South Korea, I couldn't watch the Arctic Monkeys music video Do I Wanna Know on YouTube without confirming my age through SMS due to the presence of violent scenes. And this is what violence looks like according to South Korean classification standards. It wasn't the end of the world for me. Okay, they just have those standards, and I didn't even have a local SIM card, only Wi-Fi, so I figured I will be fine. At the time, I didn't realize that this was one of those small moments where I slowly started accepting new rules without even noticing it.
Recently, the UAE has enacted a law restricting social media access for teenagers under the age of 15. The logic is simple. Why should they spend time on social media? They should focus on developing themselves instead.
At first glance, for some people, this even sounds reasonable. But I have a question. If someone turns 16, how exactly are they supposed to prove they are allowed back on the internet? And who's gonna verify that? And all of this is explained by one reason, or rather one of the reasons. Choose whichever wording you prefer. Safety, protection of children, content control. Laws introduced in the name of safety often produce the opposite effect of what they were intended to achieve.
People don't stop using the internet, they just start using it differently. Instead of direct access, they use VPNs, proxies, and mirrors. All of these became a normal part of everyday internet use. If access is restricted, users simply find ways around the restrictions.
Even block websites like the Pirate Bay or notorious Root Tracker have been formally restricted for years, yet for various reasons they still exist and remain accessible to certain users. The problem doesn't disappear, it just changes form. And yes, this could have been a perfect place for an integration of service that solves everything in just one click, but this isn't that case. Though you can still support my channel through the Buy Me a Coffee thing, link in the description, or you can press the like button.
There are good services that genuinely try to protect users, encrypt data, and avoid collecting unnecessary information. But these services often come at a cost, and there are hundreds, if not thousands, of free or extremely cheap VPN services, and questionable ones are much harder to control since they spread at an insane speed.
And I have another question. Can you actually trust them?
We already live in a world where we hand over our data to companies that promise security, but data breaches keep happening, and it has become so common that most cases barely get any reaction anymore. Data gets leaked, accounts get hacked, databases appear in public. It creates a paradox. Laws are designed for safety, but in practice, they often push people toward less transparent, less regulated, and sometimes less secure tools.
I believe that certain levels of platform regulations are still necessary. Don't get me wrong.
We live in an era of artificial intelligence where generating content has become extremely easy, and that is both a powerful tool and a real risk for the spread of misinformation. And that's why it makes sense that some models restrict, for example, the generation of images involving public figures. But what matters is not only what is being created, it also matters how it is presented.
Mechanisms like labels, transparency, community notes, and other fact-checking systems are becoming more important for today's digital digital space, because without them, the boundary between real and generated content starts to disappear. And the issue is not the AI itself.
The internet is not a neutral space anymore. It's always shaped by how it is used by people and regulated by platforms and governments.
If you enjoyed the video, please press the like button and subscribe to the channel if you want to know more about random media stuff. My name is Nick. Bye bye.
If the ship of Western freedom sinks, the rest of the world is likely to follow. We will lose freedoms everywhere. So we cannot let this happen. We cannot let this ship sink. The only way forward is to fix this ship. Let's do that. Thank you very much.